In the last video, we looked at how we can use JSX instead of plain old JavaScript elements to modify the user interface of our page. In this video, we'll discuss components. Components are the main building blocks of an application. They help us break down the UI into small reusable pieces. By combining all of the UI components into a single main component, that's going to form all of the UI that's required. This is known as the compositional model. Let's have a look at it. These two elements that we created, the list title and the list itself, they would make up two separate components of this entire page. They both have a distinct interface and share different responsibilities. Components let you sectionize your UI elements into reusable and independent pieces, such that each piece makes up one building block of your entire web page. That being said, we'll declare our title as one subcomponent of our page. We'll declare the ordered list as one subcomponent of the page as well, combine them together into a main component, and render them all at once. We're going to start this off by going back to Visual Studio Code and declare a class list. Oh, list, not lint. And declaring components is done with an ES6 class. If you don't know what a class is, make sure to visit the crash course. In this class, we need to make it into a component. How do we do so? Well, first we should import the component class from React. You can do so by opening up curly braces and import it as a property of the object being exported from the React library as component. Make sure to get the spelling right in order to properly reference the component property. And by importing component, we can extend this class to make it into a component class. Extends component. By extending our class to the component class, we can use all of its methods, one of them being the render method. The render method typically returns React elements describing what should appear on the screen. Well, simply enough, we want our list to display JSX elements that we declared previously. So copy and paste the code that we made for our ordered list right inside of our rendered method. And make sure to return the JSX like so. Fix up the spacing a little bit. There we go. So when we create an instance of this class definition, the instance, the component, will have the responsibility of rendering an ordered list. What about our title? We made this element into a component. Now let's do the exact same thing for our title. So declare a class title, which extends component. And right there, we can inherit the render method from our component superclass. And what's that component going to render? We'll pause the video and try to figure it out. Simply enough, this component would return the header that we declared beforehand. So make sure to copy and paste it and return it in our render method. We don't actually need this anymore, so you can go ahead and delete it. And now remember that we said we would combine these components into a main component. So declare a class main, which extends component. The main component, think of it as the building, whereas the subcomponents are the building blocks to form our building. So what do you think should be inside the render method of our main component? Oh, I messed this up. Open up curly braces. I hope you've guessed it, the two subcomponents themselves. So we're going to return a div, a container tag, we saw that previously, which encapsulates two instances of our subcomponents, a list, as well as a title. Fix up the margins. So our entire web page is going to contain one list and one title. Finally, we have to render this collection of components through the DOM by declaring an instance of the main component as our argument. Main, like so. And that is the compositional model. We're combining subcomponents in the render method of our main component, and rendering the main component through the DOM, which in turn displays all of our subcomponents on the screen. Once the app reruns, it should, because of hot auto reload, and I seem to have made the mistake of placing the title under the ordered list, so let me just fix that by placing it right before. And there you go. Everything looks the same. However, instead of rendering everything as plain JSX elements, we render them as unique components of our page. Why is this beneficial? For one, we get to reuse these components as many times as we want. For example, if I want to display multiple copies of our task list, simply create many instances of it. So, inside of our main component, instead of just declaring one list, we can declare two other lists, like so. Go back to our page. That was so simple. Have a look, multiple lists show up. We combined 3 instances of our list components, 1 instance of our title component, and rendered them all in the DOM through our main component and displayed the following. This is the compositional model at work. The clean interface and how easily we can reuse components is what makes React so special. Notice right now, however, how all of these 3 lists have identical copies of tasks, which makes sense. All of the list component instances that we declared in their class definition, all of them are defined to use this array to populate their list. Well, we can configure these components by giving them each different props. Big keyword there, props. So these list items that are being populated based on this hard-coded array, instead they will be populated based on the prop given to them by the component instance. For now, let's just work with 2 list components and configure the first one such that it has a way to pass data in such that it has a prop. The data that it's going to pass in, the prop tasks, will equal an array of mow the lawn and walk the dog. Make sure the array is enclosed by 2 curly braces in order to declare JavaScript expressions inside of our opening tag. The second list component, the data that it's going to pass in, its prop will be tasks as well, is equal to hose the driveway and finish the laundry. And now instead of populating the list items of each component with a hard-coded array, we will populate the list items with the data that was passed in as a prop from the component instance. So delete this array, we don't want it anymore. And to access the prop, use this .props.tasks, and we'll map over the tasks prop that we passed in instead. The this keyword, this is really important. It points to the component instance of this class that's being rendered. So we're checking if any tasks were passed in from the component instance as props. Those tasks that were passed in, that's what we'll use to map the list items for each instance. So this first instance of list will map out list items of mow the lawn, forgot the end there, and walk the dog, since that's the data it's passing in to its class definition. And the second instance will map out list items of hose the driveway and finish the laundry. So really important, every component instance that we declared is defined to populate its list item based on the array that it passes in. And if we go to our browser, that's indeed what we get. We're able to use this list component, we're able to reuse it, but configure each instance separately based on the props that it passes down. Here's a challenge. Try and modify the title component such that it has a title of to-dos, not task list. However, be sure to do it via props. Don't just hard code it right here. Pause the video and try it out. Simply enough, we'll pass in a title prop. Title is equal to a string of to-dos. And inside of our content, make sure to start off with curly braces to indicate a JavaScript expression, and write this .props.title as the title. So this title instance is defined to return a header of the props that it passes in. Let's check this out on our browser. And everything works as expected. That's mostly it for the compositional model. You were able to replace JSX elements with components, combine all of these subcomponents, these building blocks, and render them all through the main component. We were also able to reuse the subcomponents such that each one is configured differently via props. Now here's a better example. This Facebook post you see right here, imagine this as an instance from a component called post. This other Facebook post would also be an instance of some component called post. The only difference is, although these are the same component, they're just passing in different data from their props. Very similar to what we just did. These are from the same component. These are both a list component. However, they're just passing in different data from their props.